What's up, everybody? So we've been getting some fight announcements from the UFC, and recently they dropped the news that Josh Hokit is getting a massive step up in competition, and he will be taking on the number 4 ranked Curtis Blaydes. And out of all the fight announcements that have been announced, this one to me is the one that had the most controversy. You got a lot of people out there saying, yeah, man, Josh Hokit's been very impressive, throwing him into the Shark Tank, getting to see him actually tested against a top-ranked Curtis Blaydes. This is intriguing because this is sink or swim. Can you swim with the Sharks and can you make it out alive? That's the way that I look at it. And I'm one of those guys, man, I love when we get a hyped up prospect or we get a fighter that comes from an outside organization that's got a lot of hype. All the people are like, if this guy was in the UFC his whole career, man, he would be like a 10-time defending champion, right? And I love when the UFC just throws these guys right in there. I find it fun. And we have seen the UFC do it numerous times with fighters coming from outside promotions, guys that get a ton of hype really fast, and they throw them into the Shark Tank and go, put up or shut up. And to me, this is one of those situations. Now, there's a lot of people out there that are complaining about this matchup, and they are saying that this is Dana White privilege at its finest. Now, if you remember back at the UFC 262 press conference, that is where Tony Ferguson roasted Michael Chandler, and he had Dana White leaning up in the air. Dana had never heard anything funnier in his life. And Michael Chandler, to me, they threw him right into the rankings. They gave him a title shot. I mean, Michael Chandler came in, knocked out Dan Hooker. It feels like Michael Chandler at every angle continues to get a top-ranked guy. No matter how bad Michael Chandler has been, he somehow stays in the rankings and somehow continues to get ranked opposition. So I understand what people are saying, right? And when you talk about Dana White privilege, right, Tony Ferguson's kind of the one that made this popular, right? You're a Dana White favorite. Dana White's like, man, I like this guy. Something about Chandler, man. Something about this guy. I like these guys. I want to give him the preferential treatment. Sean O'Malley, Paddy Pimblett. He sees something in you to where he's like, I'm just going to, you can skip the line, right? And that's something that has been a very frustrating thing in the UFC, and I understand it. But to me, this is a very different situation because, guys, we're talking about the heavyweight division. The heavyweight division is by far, we can't sugarcoat it. We're going to go not off of emotion in this video. We're going to go off of facts, which is what I'm going to show you in this video of why this to me is just, the UFC is desperate for new contenders in the heavyweight division. You mean to tell me that you think the heavyweight division is exciting? Who are people to sit up here and criticize the matchmaking at heavyweight? Heavyweight is dog shit. Don't act like you care about heavyweight now. This is the worst division in the sport. It's honestly embarrassing. Like whenever there's a big UFC card on and we got these unranked heavyweights or these back-end ranked heavyweights go in there, they look like out-of-shape embarrassments. They gas after a round. It's pathetic. And it's embarrassing, right? And we're in the Paramount era now, right? And they're trying to draw in the casual viewer, and they tune in, they see two dudes that look like they're out of shape. They're like, these are professional athletes, and it is embarrassing. So don't act like you care so much about the heavyweight division now. That's number one. So I tweeted this out, and a lot of people agreed with me. Some people didn't. And I said, Josh Hokit is getting Dana White privilege. Give me a break. Ante D'Elia had 0 fights in the UFC. His debut fight, a ranked Marcin Tybura. Rizvan Kuniev had 0 fights in the UFC. His debut fight, a top-ranked Curtis Blaydes. Taliesin Teixeira had 1 fight in the UFC. His second fight, a ranked Derek Lewis. And by the way, I'm pretty sure that Taliesin Teixeira got thrown in there with a Taffer brother, smoked him in the first round, which was very impressive. And Teixeira had all this hype, came fresh off the Contender Series. They threw him right into that matchup. I'm pretty sure that he was ranked after beating a Taffer bro. That's how awful heavyweight is. And then he got a Derek Lewis matchup in his second fight. Josh Hokit has had 2 fights in the UFC and now gets a top-ranked opponent in Curtis Blaydes. It's called the heavyweight division, is absolutely pathetic and stale. They need new contenders. If you show any bit of promise, you will get a ranked opponent very quickly. To me, that's facts, man. To me, that's facts. And I understand who has Josh Hokit beaten. Nothing impressive. Nothing impressive whatsoever. But you mean to tell me that Rizvan Kuniev and Ante D'Elia, the big arbiter, whoa, man. These guys were so good in the PFL. They were good in other promotions. Who are they beating? Who are they beating? Nobody that is going to be probably in the rankings in the UFC heavyweight division. So maybe a guy or two here and there, but I mean, people are acting like Ante D'Elia, he was a champion in PFL. Who cares? I mean, that's great. But at the same time, like, what have you done in the UFC? You got thrown right into the rankings. And again, I don't really have a problem when the UFC takes these fighters that are accomplished in other places and they throw them right into the rankings. I don't mind. I like seeing if you're for real or not. But then we're just supposed to, fighters that gain hype and are putting in the work in the UFC, that can't exist. Even though you've racked up a couple of fights, man. Like, we see this where fighters, they gain a ton of hype and they throw them into a massive fight after a few fights. Now, I understand that this is early. I mean, it's 2 fights in, but Josh Hokit's been impressive. He's gotten 2 first-round knockouts in the UFC. And what do we see at heavyweight? Nothing but boringness. Lots of boringness, right? It's kind of the same guys at the top. It's Aspinall, Gane, and Volkov, and Pavlovich, and Waldo, and they're just leaps and bounds above everybody else. Like, it's like the top 5 to 6 of the heavyweight division are so much better than everybody else. And Curtis Blaydes has been a guy that's just been hanging around for how long now? I feel like the UFC is just tired of looking at Curtis Blaydes. They're like, come on, man, get this guy out of the rankings. He can't be the champion. He's basically lost to all the top guys, or if he's not lost to them, what are we going to just do, rematches that nobody cares about, right? Because they gave Kuniev Blaydes right away, and now they're giving Blaydes Hokit. But at the end of the day, Blaydes has kind of fought everybody, and he's either won or lost against those guys, right? And he lost against Tom Aspinall in the interim. What a disgrace that was. What was that, an interim title fight where Aspinall, or was he defending the interim belt? I can't remember how that all went down, but he did fight, Aspinall in the rematch, got knocked out. The bottom line is, I mean, people are going, why did Blaydes sign the contract? Because you could take the hype off this guy, Josh Hokit, who is very unproven. And I say this all the time, like, are they getting to skip the line if you want to look at it that way? They're getting catapulted in when, are there other guys that have more wins? Sure, you could say that. But if you're out there knocking people out and you're being entertaining, we're seeing throughout the UFC nowadays that you're going to get rewarded. You just are. You're going to get rewarded. And Josh Hokit is not a blob. So we'll discuss more of that in a minute. But here were some of the other things that I had to say off of it as well. This tweet over here, it got cut off, so I put it up here. Next, I would imagine Mario Pinto gets a top-ranked guy next, assuming he wins at UFC London coming up, as he should, and I think he will. I've been more impressed with Mario Pinto than really any other heavyweight on the rise. He's booked to be on the London card. He continues to finish people and has looked absolutely incredible. If you are a finisher, the UFC is going to reward it big time these days, especially at heavyweight. Also, if Walter Walker didn't fumble his debut against Bresky, people tend to forget about that, I think he would have fought a top 10 guy already. Another heavyweight finisher. And also, Walter Walker hasn't really been doing himself any favors by calling out, what do you say, Peppa Pig, or he wanted to fight Chris Barnett. He wanted to fight Hamdi Abdel-Wahab. Like, he's not showing, the urgency to want to come flying up the rankings. And hey, man, I respect it, wanting to get easy heel hooks on guys that don't know how to defend grappling whatsoever. I don't blame him. Easy paychecks. Right? I think the UFC also sees this as a put up or shut up fight. Hokit runs his mouth a lot, and they want to see if he can back it up. And if he can't, he will get checked by Blaydes, which is a very real possibility. Blaydes is not a layup, so I'll do a little bit of a breakdown at the end. But people also forget Shamil Gaziev also got a main event against a ranked Rosenstrike after one fight in the UFC where he KO'd Martin Buday, which, by the way, that's an incredibly underrated win by Shamil Gaziev. But listen, man, the heavyweight division, heavyweight, it is awful. It's by far the worst division in the UFC, man. And people are out here picking and choosing when to care about the heavyweight division. Let's be real. We don't care in the heavyweight division unless it's Aspinall, Gane, Volkov, Pavlovich, Waldo, and that's basically it. Derek Lewis, right? And then, of course, Shamil Gaziev, the greatest pound-for-pound fighter in the world right now. But, I mean, come on, man. Like, people are acting like they care so much about heavyweight now. Like, if you go out there and you build you market yourself even in the slightest, where people are going to like you, people are going to dislike you, the UFC is like, we're going to give you some push. But at the end of the day, people are acting like Josh Hokit has done absolutely nothing, and there's all these other people that are doing unbelievable things. And I think Mario Pinto is a guy that he's getting a ranked no, he's not getting it's Walter Walker that's fighting, I think, Tybura coming up. And I think that I've been saying that Mario Pinto is one of those guys that should be getting a ranked opponent. And I think he will after his next fight because he's been very, very impressive. But if you're knocking people out in the first round and you're a heavyweight and you're not some slob and you're not this, completely out of shape guy that's kind of embarrassing the division, they're gonna catapult you, man. They're going to catapult you. And people like to go, what has Josh even done? This guy was a dual collegiate athlete at Fresno State. He was a football player and a wrestler. So we're going to talk about guys who are coming from these outside promotions who are beating a bunch of nobodies, but they just get to get thrown in and just, right into the rankings. And it's no problem because they have this experience. But there's literally a heavyweight that's actually athletic and a dang good athlete. And by the way, this is a face mask. Hopefully they threw a flag on the play. That's a face mask, dog, right there. But this dude's an athlete. He's absolutely an athlete. We actually have an athlete in the heavyweight division. I know it's hard to believe, right? He's not a blob. That's the reality. And people are like, oh, well, these other guys fought in Bellator and PFL. Well, guess what? Josh Hokit fought in Bellator. His first 2 fights, Bellator. Fought in LFA, where he got the knockout on the Contender Series in round 2, but then he knocks out Max Geminis. I mean, he was terrible, right? That was a layup, right? And he landed a big leg kick on Josh Hokit to where I'm like, hey, man, people better start targeting the legs of Josh Hokit with them leg kicks, man. He did not have a good reaction to that. But the bottom line is he got a first-round knockout. Then he goes out there and knocks out Denzel Freeman, who I don't believe it had been finished, and he has a win in the PFL. Right, so how in the world are you going to have a problem with Josh Hokit getting a big step up in competition where it's put up or shut up? You talk a big game. You're saying all this crazy stuff. Well, we're going to throw you in there and see what the heck happens. You're not a blob. You're an athlete, right, which is more than what we could say about a lot of these guys. So to act like this dude, it's just crazy to me, man, what's, all around. And the bottom line is, don't act like you haven't seen this before. Shamil Gaziev had an impressive KO on a submission on the Contender Series. Then he gets an impressive KO over Martin Buday. I think he's the only person to finish Martin Buday, and that's someone that the UFC should have brought back. But at the end of the day, that's a good win. And right after that win, they put him in a 5-round main event against a ranked Jairzinho Rozenstruik after one win. After one win. I know people are going to say, well, all these other guys, they have more fights under their belt than Josh Hokit. But if you're going out there and you're finishing people and you're a good athlete and you're showing promise, the UFC is going to reward it. They absolutely are, man. Right? So Gaziev, one win, ranked opponent, and in a main event. Talison Teixeira, we already talked about this. Got Justin Tafa, which that's kind of I know Tafa's not like a global superstar or something, but he's a name in the heavyweight division. He's kind of a name. They gave him that fight. And was this on the main card, if I remember correctly? I know it was on the card, period, right? So at least I get that right. But I'm telling you, man, I thought that this was on the main card, if I remember correctly. And he smoked Tafa very, very quickly. And it's like, whoa, this dude, hey, we got a prospect on our hands. And then he goes out there and gets knocked out by Derek Lewis. And so we got a ranked opponent in a 5-round, which obviously because it's a main event on a fight night. So these guys, and again, Teixeira, not a guy that had, I don't think, a ton of experience coming in. Right, and then, again, Ante D'Elia had all the experience in the PFL. Comes in, you throw him in with Marcin Tybura, got no problem with it. We want to see if he's for real. Goes out there, I picked him to KO Tybura, man. This dude's good, right? And he's dropped 2 in a row, but he's been fighting 2 of the better guys in the weight class in Waldo and Sergey Spivak. Rizvan Kuniev, right? I think he had 1 fight in the PFL, right, to where I think it got overturned or whatever happened there, right? So then goes on the Contender Series, gets the win. Right, they throw him right in there with Curtis Blaydes right away. They keep giving Curtis Blaydes these, these guys it's like Curtis Blaydes basically has to defend his spot against an unranked guy. Right, and then he goes out there against J. Elton Almeida. Now, to be fair, it was supposed to be Ryan Spann, I think, right? And then Spann pulled out, and then Almeida ended up stepping in, and he basically got Almeida cut from the UFC, right? And I picked Kuniev in that fight, and I thought he beat Curtis Blaydes. I picked Kuniev twice. He's good, so throw him in there. Got no problem with it. Right, and then people love to say this, the UFC just always throws these fighters from other top promotions right in with a ranked fighter. No, they don't. They don't do that. Now, have they been doing it more often than not? Absolutely. We've seen it with Patricio Pitbull, Michael Venom Page, Michael Chandler, right? Patchy Mix, when he got thrown in, with was it Mario Bautista? We have seen fighters come over and they get thrown right in. Aaron Pico against Lerone Murphy. We've seen this. We've absolutely seen this. But Renier de Ridder was a 2-weight champion in 1. And he came over and had to fight Gerald Meerschaert, who was not ranked. We know he had to fight Gerald Meerschaert in his debut. And he was kind of going life and death with Gerald Meerschaert for a while, to where I was like, man, he was making GM3 look like a glory kickboxer out there. Was getting outstruck by GM3. Was getting tagged on the feet by GM3. But they gave him an unranked guy. Right, he was a 2-weight champion and one of the bigger promotions, right? Umar Nurmagomedov, everyone kind of knew who Umar was. The last name, right? Umar had a ton of hype outside the UFC. I think he only had very few fights in the PFL at least. He had multiple fights in the UFC before he got a ranked fighter. And then he got to fight Corey Sandhagen. And I was all about it because I'm like, look what Umar's doing. Look how he's, running over these guys. Pure domination. Did what he did to Hani Barcelos, and look how well that win has aged. Right, and then they threw him in there against Corey Sandhagen, and I was excited about it because I'm like, he's got all the hype. Umar Nurmagomedov, the Habib, he's part of that camp related to Habib. I'm like, man, all the hype. Throw him in there. Let's see what happens. I like when the UFC does that. I do. because it's put up or shut up. Now, I don't love when guys get undeserved title shots. Like if Josh Hokit got these 2 wins and they're like, title shot. Like that'd be ridiculous to me. And no, if he beats Curtis Blaydes, he should not get the next title shot because Waldo Cortez is a guy that's been putting in a ton of work. There's other guys that will be more deserving to fight for the title. So if that happens, that's a problem in my opinion. But him getting a top-ranked guy in Curtis Blaydes, I don't understand why people have such a problem with this, because at the bottom line, and people love to say this all the time, they're like, well, what's the privilege of this guy getting thrown in there with a top-ranked guy? And there's some truth to that. Like, obviously, are you cutting the line and not having to put in as much work as everybody else? Sure, you can make that argument, but you mean to tell me, when you look at the heavyweight division, that Josh Hokit does not have a very good shot to beat every single guy leading up to the top of the weight class? He has a very good shot to do it. He has a very good shot to do it. He's an athlete. You know, he's kind of marketing himself, which again, if you're a fighter that's going to market yourself and you're going to give the UFC something to kind of go off of where people are going to want to see you lose, they're going to want to see you win, you're, one of those kind of characters, they're going to push you. They're going to see you as marketable and they're going to push you. But the bottom line to me, this has to do with the heavyweight division being absolutely awful. And you have an athletic guy who is knocking people out and finishing people. That's the reality. And I think they're trying to get Curtis Blaydes up out of the rankings, right? They threw Kuniev in there hoping he would do it, and I thought Kuniev won the fight. And I thought it was crazy because if the fight's going to be close, you'd think that they would rob Blaydes to get him up out of there. So, I thought Kuniev won the fight. And now Blaydes is still around, and it's like the UFC's like, we'll try this again. And they're going to throw in a very athletic guy who can neutralize the wrestling of Curtis Blaydes in Josh Hokit, so very similar to the Kuniev matchup, and a guy that can strike in Josh Hokit, very similar to the Kuniev matchup. It's another tough matchup for Curtis Blaydes. But by the same token, this isn't easy because when people say, oh, the privilege, you're literally getting thrown in there and you risk getting checked, fraud checked, as a lot of people would call it, right? Because what if the UFC throws him in there with Curtis Blaydes and he just gets absolutely embarrassed? It's going to be humiliating and people are just going to clown on Josh Hokit, which is a real possibility that happens in this fight, by the way. Now, early and lean, I do think that Josh Hokit is able to get the job done because I don't think that Curtis Blaydes is going to be able to out-grapple him. I don't think Hokit is going to be able to out-grapple Curtis Blaydes either. And on the feet, Blaydes is not a slouch, man. He's not a slouch. He's got nasty elbows. And if he's somehow able to take Josh Hokit down and put him on his back and get, his ground and pound going, I could definitely see him getting a stoppage. I could definitely see him exposing and checking Josh Hokit. And then if that happens, it's like, I don't want to say it's the end of Josh's career, but all the hype goes away. It all goes away. But if he goes out there and steamrolls over Curtis Blaydes or at least gets a win, a guy that's been out here knocking people out, showing a ton of promise, and he's out here finishing fights, the UFC is going to reward that. And that's why he's in this opportunity, in my opinion. Heavyweight is pathetic. If you show any bit of, when people think of the heavyweight division, are they thinking of someone who's going to jab and poke their way to a boring decision? No. Are they thinking of a guy who's going to lay on people for 25 minutes in Brazil in a main event against Derek Lewis, a.k.a. Jailton Almeida? No. They don't want that. Heavyweight is supposed to be knocking people out and being entertaining. That's what it's supposed to be. And Josh Hokit has checked all of those boxes. So whether you like it or not, that is the reality. He's showing promise. He's actually athletic. He's, doesn't embarrass the heavyweight division. At least he hasn't so far. And Denzel Freeman, to be fair, not a great guy, won his debut in the UFC against a BS opponent that was terrible. But again, that's the point. The heavyweight division's so bad, man. And this isn't a layup. And I think that there's a real shot that Curtis Blaydes wins this fight, man, because on the feet, his striking to me is very simple and basic, but it's effective. And at heavyweight, anything can happen. And I think Curtis Blaydes, at this point in his career, he's slowed down a little bit. But to me, throughout what we've seen, he's the better overall fighter. I mean, what has Josh proven? Not much. But what he's proven is he can finish people, and he's athletic. His ground game is good. He's got nasty ground and pound. He can submit guys on the floor. He's getting better and better every single time out. He's still kind of green in the game. And the UFC sees this as the potential to go in there, take out Curtis Blaydes. Because like I said, out of all of the top of the heavyweight division, man, if you look at the heavyweight rankings, who is the most, out of all of the top guys, who's the most boring? Tom Aspinall, no. Gane, no. Volkov, no. Pavlovich, no. Blaydes, Waldo Cortez, no. Sergey Spivak, no, especially not after his last fight. Spivak's usually, kill or be killed in there. Rizvan Kuniev, he's been a little underwhelming, but he's still good. He's still good. Right, so when you look at the top of the weight class, Curtis Blaydes seems to be the one that the UFC's like, come on, like, what are we doing with Blaydes at this point? What are we doing with Blaydes at this point? And again, this isn't a layup for Josh Hokit. Curtis Blaydes is a tough out. We don't see many guys make easy work of Curtis Blaydes. We've seen him knocked out. We've seen that he has a little bit of an issue, especially if you could land clean on him. And Josh Hokit's got output, man. And like I said, for a heavyweight, he moves very well. He's explosive. His striking is getting better. He's got power. He's got volume. He's got activity. And he has a gas tank. So to me, he's a guy that does not embarrass the heavyweight division. That's what the UFC sees here. Like I said, if they were throwing him in for a title shot, I would have a massive problem with that because clearly that would be Dana White privilege at its finest. A guy getting 2 wins over nobody, throwing him in there again, to get we literally had Kai Asakura come over from Ryzen and walk into a title shot. And I understand that he was proven in another organization, but people are like, to me, it's like, well, why are you going to hold it against fighters that are putting in work in the UFC? So was Josh Hokit just supposed to stay? If he would have stayed in Bellator and been in the PFL instead of going to LFA, he probably could have been a champion over there, given how bad, especially the heavyweight division is over there. I mean, I know that Ngannou's there obviously now, so he's not beating Ngannou, obviously. But a lot of the other guys, does he beat Renan Ferreira, who's like, what are the other better heavyweights? Probably. So Josh Hokit, if he stayed around and had a very few fights in the PFL, became a champion there, then, we just throw him in there against Curtis Blaydes now. You see what I'm saying? So to me, I don't have a problem when the UFC takes these fighters that are from other promotions, throws them in against ranked guys, not when they give them a title shot automatically like Kai Asakura. But I understand flyweight desperate, looking for a star in Asakura because he's got a massive following on YouTube, and I get all that. But at the end of the day, to me, it all comes back to what I said in this tweet. It's called the heavyweight division is absolutely pathetic and stale. They need new contenders. If you show any bit of promise, you will get a ranked opponent very quickly. I feel like it is as simple as that. I don't think that this is Dana White privilege here. This is literally the UFC grasping at straws here. The heavyweight division is pathetic. It is stale. It is boring outside of the very top of the weight class. And even given what just happened with the eye pokes on Aspinall, is Pineda moving up? It's just been a disaster at heavyweight. They're trying to get it right. They're trying to find new contenders. That's what I think that they are doing in this matchup here. But if you guys enjoyed this video, if you could do me a favor, give it a like down below, or give it a like. Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you are new, if you could subscribe to the channel, I would greatly appreciate it. I'll see you next time.